And first, I want to welcome everybody to Commerce Committee. I see a lot of new faces here today, and you came at the right day because we're discussing star bonds today, and so hopefully you'll learn a lot. I do have a rule. There's a committee rule and a chair rule for no signs in the committee, and I see lots of signs. I'm going to allow them to stay as long as you keep them down. Is that fair? Okay. Anyway, welcome to committee, and I hope that you guys learn a lot. All right, first item on the agenda. Oops. Hearing, or we're going to have discussion and pass out Senate Bill 197. Before we do that, we're going to get a update from staff on some of the recent changes that we've made on the star bond statute before this bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Mike Ditch, Legislative Research. I'll cover changes to the star bonds program since 2021. But focus mostly on the 2021 bill reauthorizing the program, 2 budget provisos that have passed recently, as well as kind of briefly touch on the professional sports complex bill that used star bonds. 2021 House Sub for SB 124 reauthorized star bonds program, making various changes, including sunsetting the program on July 1, 2026. Bill added major business facility and rural redevelopment projects to the list of eligible projects. Rural redevelopment projects were defined as projects of regional importance, not in a city with a population of more than 50,000 and a minimum of $3 million in capital investment. Both types of projects are included among the limited instances in which costs associated with vertical construction may be financed by star bonds. Bill also increased the minimum required capital investment and projected gross annual sales thresholds from $50 million to $75 million each, or $40 million if the project is in a metropolitan area with a population between 50,000 and 75,000 and deemed to be of high value by the Secretary of Commerce. 2021 bill added several limitations. First, it prohibited state and local government officials from being employed or contracted by a star bond project developer or manager. Second, it limited the geographic scope of star bond districts in metropolitan areas to contiguous parcels of real estate. This limitation was suspended for the professional sports complex bill in 2024. Third, it prohibited all projects established after July 1, 2021 with existing sales tax revenue from pledging more than 90% of new state sales tax collections in excess of the existing base sales tax revenue. Lastly, it prohibited ownership transfer of real property acquired with star bonds proceeds without authorization by the Secretary, and provided that while star bonds remained outstanding, disclosure of the sale price, name of the purchaser, and any individual owner, partner, officer, or principal of the purchaser. Bill made several changes to feasibility study requirements, including that a study be conducted by 1 or more consultants pre-approved by the Secretary of Commerce, be paid for by the developer, city, or county in question, comply with study parameters and methods approved by the Secretary subject to the Secretary's control and oversight over its scope, conduct, and methodology, include within the economic impact portion of the study the anticipated effects of the project on regional and statewide economies, include a plan describing how visitor data would be tracked and annually reported to the Secretary, a net return on investment analysis, a summary of community involvement, participation, and support for the project, and a full disclosure of all federal, state, and local tax incentives applicable to the star bond district. Bill also required that the resolution and ordinance required to establish a star bond project district include a description of all tax incentives applicable to the district, and that such information be provided at the public hearing considering the adoption of the project plan. Bill required that work be commenced according to an approved plan of construction. The bill also required funding to cease if a developer does not commence work within 2 years of project approval, with the option to resubmit to the Secretary of Commerce for reapproval within 1 year. Bill also requires the annual star bonds report provided by the Department of Commerce to the Legislature to include information on gross annual sales projections and their relationship to bond debt service requirements and other expenses, visitor tracking data, including zip code residence data, and a description of all federal, state, and local tax incentives applicable within the district or to any businesses located within the district. The bill also required relating to data and reporting that cities, counties, and developers provide all information requested by the Secretary for Commerce's Economic Development Incentives Program database, direct links to information for each star bond project within the database, For cities and counties with websites, that their first page of their site include notice of the public hearing to consider the establishment of a star bond district, the ordinance or resolution of the district, and any information concerning public hearings, records, and feasibility studies for star bond projects. And that for purposes of inclusion in any public record, the developer lists the name of the owners, partners, officers, or principals of the developer. Hopefully that's the longest part. We should move fairly quickly from here. In 2023, there was a proviso in the budget bill authorizing the Secretary of Commerce to approve a star bond project for a major amusement park or historic theater. Major amusement park was defined as a project with amusement rides, and the Secretary finds that capital improvements of at least $100 million will be built in the state to construct the major amusement park. The proviso did not define historic theater. During the 2024 special session, HB 2001 authorized projects involving major professional sports complexes and provided those projects with additional sources of revenue for bond payment. As I kind of alluded to at the beginning, this bill utilizes components of the Star Bonds program for funding, but contains several provisions unique to the program and not really applicable to other Star Bond programs. Examples would include, but not limited to, extending the payback from 20 to 30 years, increasing financing to 70% of the total project costs instead of the usual 50%, and allowing the Secretary of Commerce and the Legislative Coordinating Council to approve a project without city or county approval. Again, those changes are unique to this project and are not applicable to other Star Bond projects. Kind of moving on from that one, in 2025, there was a proviso in the budget bill authorizing the use of Star Bonds for redeveloping malls in a new or existing Star Bond project district. The proviso authorized issuing bonds to pay any or all amount of the overall project cost and not limited to payment of only a certain percentage of total project costs. The proviso included costs incurred for the construction or renovation of interior or exterior structures, parking facilities, and multi-level parking facilities if the project is a large metropolitan mall or a rural mall project that includes a sports, entertainment, or educational tourism component. Projects in either of those project types would also have needed to have their application received before January 1, 2026 to be eligible for the Star Bond program. The proviso required the large metropolitan mall projects to draw at least 30% of the project's visitors from a distance of at least 100 miles and at least 20% of the visitors from outside the state. The large metro malls would also need at least $50 million in capital investment and $50 million in projected gross annual sales. Rural malls would need to be in a metropolitan area with a population of 50 to 75,000 or outside a metro area of at least 50,000 people as of the 2020 census. Both types of projects would be required to be located in an area of a city or community experiencing economic declines as determined by the Secretary of Commerce based on certain data. Both types of projects also need to be in a county that did not have a previous application for a mall redevelopment project approved by the Secretary of Commerce. That wraps up the changes since 2021. I would defer to the Department of Commerce for any questions on how the program is administered, but happy to stand for any questions about the legislative history of the program.
Good job. Do you need a drink of water before we take questions? Okay. All right. Oh, we must have bored some people because everybody left. Yeah. Representative Williams has a question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is an important question because I think it's one that we have bounced around back and forth with Commerce and with Eddie and others. And so I just want to get clarity. We did make a change, I believe it was in 2021 when you listed everything, in which we said you can't take a portion, you can't take a star bond and put another star bond district next to it and then use those monies. I think that was included in your 2021. You can't layer, is that correct? You can't layer two together. So if I have sales tax revenue from one district and then I put another district adjacent to it, I can't move or utilize those monies from one district to another district. Is that correct? Okay.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Ditch.
Yeah, what I show here is that in the 2021 bill, the bill limited the geographic scope of star bond districts and metropolitan areas to contiguous parcels of real estate. That limitation was suspended for the sports team complex projects, but I'm not aware of any other modifications beyond that.
Okay, so it still exists except for the chiefs, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and so then my second question relates to projects within a district. It's my understanding that there is no explicit language in statute that says, that prohibits that once you pay off your STAR bonds in a district, you might have project 1, 2, 3, and let's say those 3 happened at different times, and then all 3 projects, you use the sales tax and you pay off your bond, and you're done. At that point, does the district dissolve? And if so, if the district dissolves, if you pay off your bonds early, let's say you pay them off in 10 years, and you have another 10 years, could you theoretically use the same sales tax in the same district for a new project and use it to pay off? Because you're in the same district, you don't have to do a baseline. So that's my question. Is there any statute that explicitly doesn't allow?
Mr. Ditch, can you answer that, or do we need the reviser?
I'll defer to my colleague, Mr. Reimer.
Okay, Charles, so the question is, when a star bond district is formed, bonds are sold in their entirety, and they are paid off, can they put another project inside that same district and sell additional bonds on top of what they had already sold or been approved for?
Chairman, we would have to research that to make sure we have an accurate answer.
Okay, and I believe that if that is not the case, Representative Williams, if they're going to research that. Okay, all right. Department of Commerce? Rachel Willis.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that question. Yes, in that scenario, we could, once that district is established, those bonds pay off for those projects, we could create a new project within that same district as long as it doesn't exceed the original 20 years. So those first ones pay off in 10 years, we still have another 10 years of eligibility for that space.
So Rachel, following up on that, if there is an initial amount of bonds and you've only sold some of them, I can see that happening. But if we said, okay, you can sell $75 million in bonds, say, and you only sold 50, you could do the additional 25, but could you do additional, say, 100 million, something you weren't approved for?
I don't believe so. And again, it's important to remember that whatever that gap is, right? So if it was 75 and we did 50 and we did that in 10 years, then we still would have 25 that we would have to get done in 10 years, right?
Okay, so, and that's pretty common that you sell them in stages.
Yes.
But can you ever go over what was initially approved?
No, we cannot go over what was initially approved for that district.
Okay, so is that in statute anywhere?
Yes.
If you could find that for us, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
I think that would clear up a lot of questions that we've gotten over the last week.
Yes. Yep.
Looks like we have someone else that wants to chime in a little bit, maybe. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Welcome to Commerce.
No, thank you. My name is Amber Cabrera. I'm an attorney with the Department of Commerce. I just want to clarify, when the Secretary approves a STAR bond project and authorizes an amount of bonds that are issued, that amount cannot be exceeded. So for example, if it's a $100 million STAR bond project and there's capacity, right? The market says, oh, we maybe 200 million, they're that interested, we're stuck with 100 million in STAR bonds. Now, if an additional project is approved within that district, that is a new project that has, that is another STAR bond project, the Secretary will do the exact same thing. They will authorize, it will all be reviewed under a revenue study to determine what's the capacity in the district with this additional new project, and then the secretary will authorize an amount of bonds for that particular project.
Okay, so what would the base be?
The base remains
At the original?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Representative Williams, follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me, because I don't think we got the complete answer. So the statute, I'm going to read right from the statute. If anybody, if you want to follow along, it's on page 9. Go to line 37. Page 9, line 37, at the end, it says, no star bond project. So we're talking about the projects, not the district. Project district shall include any real property which has been part of another star bond project district unless such star bond project and star bond project district have been approved by the Secretary of Commerce. So my question is, I don't see anything in statute, and can you point to a specific statute that disallows additional bonds to be purchased and used?
Representative, she said that they could do that. There is no statute prohibiting that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, just to be clear, there is a statutory provision that authorizes additional bond issuances. So I do not have that in front of me, but there is a particular statute within the Star Bond Act that specifically authorizes additional bond issuances. What you were referencing, Representative Williams, is if we have a established Star Bond district, and then there is a new project, a new district, we cannot take that secondary district and take that land that was in that original first district. In other words, you cannot have one star bond district within the same geographic area and then take another one and put it in the exact same area after those 20 years are done.
Okay, one last follow-up. I'm so sorry. Ma'am. Sorry, one follow-up here. In the case that, in your example of, say, you've approved $100,000 or $100 million in bonds, and then there's a second round that for a second project in the same district, and it's 10 years later. Those bonds are only 10-year bonds, correct?
The state can only allocate we can only collect the sales tax, the incremental sales tax, for 20 years. So if the first set of bonds pay off in 10 years and we have a secondary project that meets the requirements under the Star Bond Act, we only have another 10 years left. And again, there are revenue studies that are performed to evaluate, is there going to be enough sales tax generated still in the remaining 10 years to be able to pay whatever the bond amount is going to be for that secondary project.
Okay, and then do they still have to go through the process of the local government approving the additional bonds and the secretary approving that?
Yes.
All right, and then
There is a new feasibility study that is conducted. There is a new, it's an entirely functionally new project just within that district.
okay, and I guess I would assume that the argument for using the same base as the original base is that that attraction brought the base up.
No, the base stays the same.
As the original.
Right, so if I have my Star Bond district and my base is 1 million because there was already some retail in that space, it's going to stay 1 million during those 20 years.
Okay, but the second round of bonds is also based on that, but the increase, theoretical increase in the sales tax was created by the project itself, and so that's why you're able to continue that. You think, I mean, that would be the justification for not readjusting the base.
The new project will also generate retail and will generate sales tax revenue. So there's always an evaluation of how much capacity is left in the remaining term and how much new generation from this additional project is going to be able to be collected to then determine how much bonds are going to be able to be sold.
All right, I understand that. Representative Williams, do you have any follow-ups?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Because I know it's confusing, but let's just use an example. This example is not one that is proposed to happen. This is not something that the chiefs say that they're interested in. But just to help us understand, you have an area, and let's say you sell the $2 billion worth of bonds, and with interest they're $4 billion, or whatever it is over the life of the projects, the mini projects. They all get paid off fast because the projections are they're going to get paid off in 11 to 15 years. So you have $2 billion worth of bonds plus interest approved, or 2.775 approved. Now it's paid off, but you have a 30-year window. So now, if they paid it off in 15 years, it sounds like it, there's nothing in statute to prohibit additional bonds that are after 15 years, and you could take the entire 30 years because you're putting a new project in. Maybe the new project is a renovation.
As I stated earlier, there's a specific statutory provision within the Star Bond Act that allows for additional bond issuances within a Star Bond district.
So in my scenario, you could use 30 years and you could get new bonds. And I know I'm probably repeating myself, but I just wanted to be sure that that's the way it is.
But again, when you go out to sell bonds, there are people who are evaluating the district, evaluating the sales tax revenue, and there's also multiple revenue studies that evaluate the district to see what is the capacity for an additional bond, for additional bonds being sold in that district. So in the event that there is a second bond issuance for any of our Star Bond districts, there's an evaluation. Is there even enough capacity with the new development and the current sales tax that are being collected in there to support any future bonds?
All right, thanks a lot. I think we beat that one to death. All right, so for purposes of discussion, Senate Bill 197, I have a couple of changes that we need to make based off of, if you recall last year, we inserted a lot of language around malls and redoing malls, and it was for 1 year in the Star Bond bill. That provision, along with a provision to allow the secretary to approve a vertical construction with 60,000, populations under 60,000. That was also an input for just 1 year. And both of those have been completed. We also put those in the budget bill because we did not pass this bill last year. And so the malls have been completed and the projects have been approved. And so I would like to make a motion to delete all the mall language in the bill on page 2, 3, and anywhere else in the bill. And on page 3, new section 3 that allowed the secretary to approve the vertical construction project, because those have all been done under the budget bill. I need a second on the motion. Representative Bohai, questions? So for clarification, there may have been some of you that requested amendments to this bill, and they went through the reviser. I asked any amendments that I was aware of. I asked people to make them conceptually, because the revisers were so buried trying to get bills out. And so the amendments that I'm bringing, I'm explaining, and you can look at the language in the bill to see what I'm taking out. And I would imagine that most of the amendments are pretty plain English, and we'll be able to get through this. So Representative Clayton, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, my question is just, if possible, in the instance of a conceptual amendment, if you could list page numbers just for my notes in the future, I would be grateful for that. Just want to make sure that I'm writing a very clear and solid bill brief and communicating this to my Commerce team well. Thank you.
You bet. So my motion is on page 2 and 3 and elsewhere in the bill where it mentions malls and the definitions thereof, we're going to remove that. Also on page 3, new section 3 will be removed. And it's seconded by Representative Bohai. Is there any discussion? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to follow along here and failing. I get the mall part, but what were you doing to vertical construction? That was the part I was left out on.
There was language inserted into this bill last year to allow for one project. I think it was a mall, or not a mall, but a conference center in Salina. That's why we put under 60,000. And that project has been approved, and it's also in the budget bill. And so they have till July to approve it if they didn't, but they have approved it. And so we don't need that language in there anymore because it's just confusing.
Okay.
Line 28, new section 3 on page 3.
So with this amendment, vertical construction would no longer be included in Star Bond's usage?
No.
I'm trying to follow. I don't even find
No,
this thing here.
Not at all. There's still other projects that qualify for vertical construction. This was for that one project, and that clause expired July 1st, 2025.
Then, by golly, I'm on board, and if you don't have a second, I'll do it.
All right. Any further questions or discussion on those two items? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against say no. Motion passes. Further discussion. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item was introduced and passed in appropriations from Representative Wassinger. And Representative Wassinger is here, but we have it listed. And the conceptual amendment is to add a requirement for Commerce to include in annual Star Bond reports, which they already provide, the total net effects of businesses moving into and out of each Star Bond district. So that would be the number of businesses moving in and the number of businesses moving out of the district, and the number of businesses who existed as a Kansas business but relocated into the Star Bond district, and the total aggregate amount of foregone sales tax business generated before moving into the Star Bonds district. And whenever new jobs are created, a report are included in the annual report that shall include net impact of new jobs from Kansas income tax filers from out of state.
So we have some notes on some of these discussions, and I've asked Charles to go ahead and hand those out so everybody can kind of see that. Representative Williams, can you restate that?
Yes, and if you take a look at it, there's several parts in here. It's just a reporting, a transparency piece. It does not change anything other than allows us to understand the movement of businesses in and out of a district, that net aggregate effect, as well as the movement of jobs in and out of that business, in and out of that district, to the best of Commerce's ability.
Okay, right. So this was brought in appropriations, and during that debate, I had mentioned that we would insert similar language into this bill so that it wouldn't have to go in a budget bill. But I did want to make sure that it included businesses that had left the Star Bond district, because when that happens, the Star Bonds have to backfill that sales tax that that business was creating when the base was drawn. And so I think it'd be good to see the net effect of businesses that that it creates, which the ones that are moving in. So that would be a net positive. And then the businesses that went out of business, that they had to backfill the sales tax, because I know that at least 2 districts that has happened where companies went bankrupt right after, we accounted for the base, and then that company went bankrupt, and so we had to backfill. And then the third part of it was, if a business moves from one side of town to another, if in that case, we would want to know that as well for just data purposes. Does that sum that up properly, Representative
Yes, Mr.
Williams?
Chair. The only other item is one that was discussed in Commerce previously and has been a recurring discussion such as if a report says creates 4,000 new jobs, or if a report says creates 500 new jobs, then we ask Commerce to work with the Department of Revenue and identify out of those 4,000 jobs reported, how many of those were previously Kansas income tax filers.
I don't see that in here, and I think that's going to be very difficult to.
It's right here.
That's going to be really hard for the Department of Commerce to figure out. They don't have access to personal tax data. There have to be an MOU between the Department of Revenue and the Department of Commerce, and I mean, it's something that if we put it in statute, you're going to tie their hands.
Mr. Chair, I will delete that out of respect for you. I will say it is something that the Department of Revenue does have, and with the technologies that we have to do impact studies and so forth, it should be done. If we report we're going to have 4,000 new jobs, that it should be an understanding that these are are there 2,000 jobs from Kansas or 8,000, you know, we just need to know, are they from out of state or they moved from another business in our state? But it's, I deleted the language.
All right, so we're limiting it just to businesses in and out, and
I just deleted the last line, and whenever new jobs created report are included in the annual report shall include net impact of new jobs from Kansas income tax filers and from out-of-state new income tax filers for the district. I will work on that for another day.
got it. Representative Laura Williams with a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you addressed a couple of issues with districts in the past of having businesses move out. Is that an ongoing problem that happens every year? Or is it just something that has happened once or twice, to your knowledge?
So in the last revision of the Star Bond bill that we passed, we disallowed companies from moving into the district, closing and moving into the district. That's already in statute. But there are businesses that it creates, and we'd like to know what they are and the impact of them. And then there's also businesses that go out of business, and that does happen quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hsu with a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's kind of hard to do this conceptually sometimes. Would this apply only to Star Bonds districts that get approved going forward, or does this also apply to Star Bonds districts that have already been approved and we're asking them to do stuff that they haven't been collecting?
Representative Williams.
So I think the reports are updated annually, and the reports are updated for every Star Bond district annually. So I think that this would be something that every developer or Star Bond district could produce and provide that information to Commerce. So I do not think it would be too much to ask when we've got a significant amount of bonds to have this type of information. I do think it's available to them.
Okay, we're going to give the revisers a lot of leeway on writing these things. And then once they are, we'll get them to the committee. Do we need a second on that? We do need a second on the motion. Representative Wassinger seconds the amendment. Any discussion or any questions? Any further discussion or questions? Representative Kessler.
Yeah, just refresh my memory. What exactly all are we voting on here on this motion?
We're voting on a report that the Department of Commerce would generate to the best of their ability that would discuss the inflow and outflow of businesses in a star bond district.
So we're just doing number 2 on this list that we just received, correct?
Yeah, and for clarification,
Yep.
that
With the
deal we
scratch
handed
out
out
that
in
last
just
part,
notes,
that
yeah.
last sentence. Okay, gotcha.
Right. Revisor Reimer.
Just to clarify that we're removing the sentence, the last sentence, starting with "and whenever," and then going to the end of the paragraph. So that is, the amendment is just for the other part of paragraph 2.
Yes. Any further questions? Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I forgot to welcome Representative Owsley to Commerce Committee.
So I'm unclear. Was this retroactive or no?
I'm sorry?
Was this retroactive or no?
It's a report generated each year for all star bond districts. So it would be, they don't have to go back and document everything for the last many years, I wouldn't think, but just every year, the inflow and outflow in all the star bond districts.
Correct. You're just going to update it from the year that it starts, but you would use, I think there's 18 star bond districts, 17. So for those star bond districts, they would report for that year, 2026 or 7 or whenever the implementation date is.
Okay, thank you.
Also like to welcome Representative Curtis and Representative Long. Welcome back, sir. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And not to be a pill about this, because I know how much pressure our revisers and everyone is under. I know how crazy this is, but are all of our amendments on this during the committee process today going to be conceptual like this? How does that going to look going forward as far as the revisers clearing it up? I have every confidence in our staff, but I don't like voting on something and finding out what's in it later.
Well, you're welcome to ask all the questions that you want to be comfortable with or not comfortable with voting on an amendment. But we do this all the time. I mean, we allow conceptual amendments in this committee, and normally that's how, when we work a bill, things come up and we discuss it and then have an amendment that comes out of it. So it's certainly not out of the normal. It's allowed under the rules, and we do give the reviser flexibility to as far as the intent. And I think that we've asked a lot of questions on this particular one and on the previous one that you should be able to discern what the amendment does. If not, you don't have to support it, but you'll get it before it hits the floor. And then if you want to, try to make changes on the floor, you can do so. Any further discussion or questions? And that's if the amendments go on. So, all right, seeing none, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close on the additional report amendment.
All right, committee, you've heard the Williams amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no.
No.
Motion passes. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Williams, Christy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have a list, but some of these items do not need to be addressed because there's already an expiration date on them, such as number 4. Someday when we have an updated program, our Chair Tarwater said that there could be a complete cleanup, but at this date, we could just cross off that. Number 1 is irrelevant. It's already in the bill. On item number 5, there's a couple of easy ones that we could perhaps put together, 5, 6, and 7. 5 is, there is a feasibility study on page 4, and we think that it does include many fiscal elements in that try to help us understand the sales tax, the property tax, those revenues that are flowing through the state. But for clarity on that and emphasis, we were just adding the fiscal impact study. Item 6 is on line, if you want to turn to page 5. So question 5 is pretty easy. Item 6 is just trimming back a little bit of that vertical construction and trimming it back by not allowing vertical construction for those periphery items. It has to be something that is in the list of acceptable vertical items, vertical construction items that are on page 6 and 7, so you wouldn't, those additional restaurants or souvenir shops or retail stores, those actual vertical items would not be, vertical construction items would not be allowable. And then item 7, deleting arcades. Remember, we've just changed in item 1 last year. We added in there that we had to fulfill the 20% out of state, 30% 100 miles or more. I'm pretty sure we have arcades everywhere, so nobody's gonna probably drive 100 miles or across state lines for an arcade. And I think it's something that's kind of outdated. So I recommended deleting it. And that's my motion.
Okay, Representative Williams, I have a few questions for you on that. We'll start with the fiscal impact study. Can you explain how that would be different than the economic impact study? What are you looking for there?
Yeah, we discussed this. So I'll go back to page 4. An economic impact study obviously is all the effects to my business, your business, my home, your home. The fiscal impact study is the typical phraseology or term for when you're looking at government expenses. You're gonna have to build an interchange. You're going to have to update your sewer, your plumbing, sewer and water and all that infrastructure, and that's a cost. And then it also includes things such as, okay, we're gonna have to hire more police, fire for this expanded district. And then it also includes sales tax that is new sales tax that you lost. It's taking into account property tax that may be abated in the district that you are already receiving. So the fiscal impact is all encompassing for government, and the feasibility did include, so we looked up KSA 12-17-166B, we looked it up, and many of those elements were included. But because a fiscal impact is so all-encompassing, the additional word was added. If the revisers, or if you don't believe that that is necessary, but that to me is more telling than feasibility. Feasibility, for me, if I just read the word, it means that somebody's gonna come and say, hey, this looks feasible because I've done all the numbers for economic development, fiscal, and it's gonna work. Whereas a fiscal impact automatically implies we're talking about government-related resources.
So a fiscal note.
Well, it's a fiscal note over a period of time. So in a sense, yes.
Okay. On the arcades, if you read that, that's part of a star bond project. It's not a star bond project. So arcades could be included in the rural areas, I think. Is that what that's for? So it's not just for clarification, you're not doing a star bond project that is an arcade. That's just part of a star bond project. Go ahead.
Sure, so, correct. It's not saying that the arcade is the only project. It's just saying that vertical construction is intended to be used for certain things, and we're using it for the stadium, we used it for the speedway, we're using it for many things. There's a list on page 6 and 7. But it's an effort to trim it back, because if I have a Star Bond district and I'm going to put a bowling alley with an arcade in it, but I have one 10 miles away, that's fine if you put it in your district, but the vertical construction aspect of it, they can collect the sales tax off of it. It can still be in a Star Bonds district, but they can't use the capital investment and the bonds for building that arcade. You can have it, but again, it's just trimming the uses for the vertical construction. It's not disallowing it. It's just saying it doesn't qualify for vertical construction monies, just like in the past, restaurants haven't been allowed, or now shopping malls won't be allowed. Well, that's a different example.
Okay, so Charles, do we have a definition of what an arcade is? Because can an arcade also be a passageway that connects buildings?
So I would have to look that up, but it strikes me that that's a possibility. Yes, I'll have to take a quick.
Okay, so not necessarily the video games.
Yes, potentially, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions? Representative Clayton.
Thank you. So just to clarify, on our list here, this amendment is 5, 6, and 7, or does that also include 8? Just need a yes or a no to know what it is, 5, 6, and 7 on the list.
Representative Christie Williams.
Yes, it does not include 8, 5, 6, and 7.
Thank you.
And the arcade could be as defined for entertainment purposes, not for other purposes that you alluded to, entertainment purposes, not a passageway or.
Representative Kessler. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wouldn't any form of that be an entertainment, though?
Okay, we're getting really into the weeds, but that's what we're here for. That's why we came back on Friday, to make sure that we got this right. Yes, so we need a good definition of arcades as maybe video games or such. Representative Williams.
Is there a definition? But yes, that would be my intent.
Okay. Charles Reimer.
So alternatively, one could define arcades to mean, a walkway, or I haven't found it yet, but the other meaning, one could do it either way.
So your intent's not to include walkways and archways in your amendment?
Yeah, I don't know why that would, I don't know whether that would be, you have a walkway between two, that doesn't even make sense that they would put it, the legislative intent would be for that purpose as a walkway. So yes, my intent is that it would have to be for those types of video, fun, the traditional arcade.
Representative Laura Williams with a question on the amendments.
Are we on questions or discussion?
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am overall just hesitant in supporting this with, one, the unnecessary burden of duplicating the fiscal impact study, but also two, deleting arcades. I don't exactly know what the impact of that would be. I think we have a lot of different definitions of arcades. I can think to a Star Bonds project in KCK that has Atlas 9 that I think would be considered an arcade. So I think it's kind of a broad definition there, and I do think that there could be some unintended consequences with these amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of agree with that, to be honest with you. Can I ask the representative, what the purpose is or the hang up is on the arcade? I'm just kind of curious at this point. Thank you.
Representative Christie Williams.
Yeah. Initially, the purpose is just to slim and make less, to take a star bond that continues to grow. Every time we touch the star bond, we tend to expand it. This time, we're actually removing the malls. It was a proviso last year, so it doesn't have much extension. So that was the intent. But if it's not the will of the committee, I'm happy to take out the arcade. It just seems like one item that we didn't need to address. And it was about slimming the list, because the list has grown significantly since the 1990s. And before you know it, our whole state's going to be a star bond district. But I do stand by the others, but if the committee votes it down, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But on the arcade, just to solve that little question, just like I did before, I will strike that particular item. And it's just 5 and 6.
Revisor Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm assuming that most of the committee has already Googled this, but just from the Internet Oxford Languages, there are two meanings for arcade. One is a covered passageway with arches along one or both sides, and the other is a short for video arcade. So one is an architectural meaning, and the other is a commercial meaning, video games and pinball machines.
Okay, so thanks for the definition, but you're removing that part for now.
Yes, I removed it. I think that the intent of the legislature is probably the one with the video, but I am fine with moving it.
Okay, any further discussion on the feasibility or the fiscal impact study statement and number 5 or number 6? Representative Kessler.
Is number 6 the one that was taking the vertical out, or?
Representative Williams, number 6, can you explain it?
Number 6 does not take out vertical construction except for explicitly what is in line number, let's see, page 5. So it would be those, if you look at it, it says that you could have a star bond district, and that development can include concessions, souvenir facilities, so forth, and then it adds, it cannot have the hotels, motels, restaurants, and retail facilities not directly related. So I just took out the not directly related. So that means that you can't have those. You're going to have hotels, you're going to have restaurants, you're going to have those things in your star bond district, and they are going to generate sales tax. But using bonds to pay off individual restaurants, individual hotels, that's taxpayer money used to pay off the construction, the vertical construction of those private businesses. And that is entirely different than large stadiums and things of that nature. If that's the way we want to do it, then I'd recommend all hotels, restaurants, motels, retail facilities in the state of Kansas be eligible for that benefit. Because if I have a restaurant or if I have a hotel, I would love for sales tax to pay that off, and I'm the owner of it. So that's why that's eliminated. So right now, they can't do it. They are not allowed to have their restaurants. But if they say it's directly related or necessary to the operation of each facility, then they can do it. And that just gives a whole lot of discretion to the secretary. And then in that case, in any star bond district, anywhere, if I'm the developer, I am absolutely going to advocate for getting those paid. And if we're serious about vertical construction, we should really limit it to those things that are truly unique and are the cornerstone of the district and not all the ancillary. Because now we're paying for private businesses, and we're not doing that for businesses in everybody else's area and region. And I feel like that's unfair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Kessler.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I apologize. Maybe I'm just not soaking it in, but I'm just having a hard time how that really moves the needle here. I guess I'll have to think on that one a little bit more, but I'm just struggling with that just a little bit. Not because I don't like it or I think it's good or I hate it. I'm having a really hard time following that description.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what the amendment is intended to do, but I really think that we intended to do that when this was initially drafted, and the phrase "not directly related to or necessary to the operation of such facility" already encompasses that. So that as an example, I can't think, if we're building an amusement park, I can't think of a restaurant in the parking lot that's necessary to the operation of that facility. If we're building a stadium, for example, I can't imagine a hotel across the street being necessary for the operation of that stadium. Now, if we had a hotel within a stadium, okay, all right, we might be able to figure something out on that, but I don't see that as something that we're actually discussing ever. So it seems to me that the last part of that sentence does exactly what you're wanting to achieve with this amendment.
Representative Christy Williams.
The problem is we don't know that. We don't know from each Star Bond district, if we had a report and we knew how many of the individual restaurants, retail shops, motels, hotels have been built with bonds. I don't know that. I know that this will be allowable for the Chiefs deal. And those individual hotels and retail stores and anything in that district, the developer will own, and we will pay off the bonds. And so they will be the recipients of a property that will exist long after the bonds are paid off. That is not something that regular business people have the ability to do. I cannot start a restaurant and expect for the city of Augusta to pay my bonds. I have to take out a loan and build my restaurant. And so that's what I'm doing, is creating parity. If in fact they don't ever use it, to your point, then striking it has no effect because they're not doing it. So I'm just striking it so that we know without a doubt that it's disallowed. It is allowed for the Chiefs. That's set aside. So I would turn that on you. By leaving it, we don't know. By taking it out, we say moving forward, we're not going to pay for vertical construction for these ancillary items within a district. We will pay for the items that are listed on pages 6 and 7.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I absolutely appreciate what you're trying to do here as far as kind of try to narrow the scope down and do it. But I think the reality at the end of the day, I mean, since every project that's ever been done is completely different. I mean, everything, there's different moving parts. There's different, I mean, there's no two projects that look the same. And if we keep narrowing it down to what, you know, the resources that the Department of Commerce has to make this thing be the most perfect that, you know, that they believe it could be. I mean, I think we're just keep hamstringing it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I understand the broadness of the bill, but I think part of the reason it's so broad is because of every project is so different and is so, I mean, they're so vastly different. But I can appreciate what you're doing, though.
Representative Christy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this portion is only allowable if you look for major multi-sport athletic complex. It's not allowable for all of the others. So it's only listed on this one. It's not listed on any of the others. And I bet, Mike, if you could tell us what year was this added? This is a new item. Was this the 2021? Yeah, it's a 2021. So I'm really not narrowing that much. I mean, trust me, the chair would never let me narrow the way that I would narrow. That's not happening. But this is something that was added, and it's the only one that does that. But if the committee likes to pay for other people's restaurants, hotels, motels, then the committee will vote it down. I think it's unfair to all the restaurants, hotels, retail that exist outside of the district, and they don't have bonds paying it off for them that are paid by taxpayer. And that's really, my goal is more of an equity. Let's keep the Star Bonds district for what it was intended. This was an expansion in 2021. It still is allowable. They're still in the Star Bonds. They get all the benefit of being in the district. They just can't have their vertical construction paid off by the taxpayer.
All right. I would point out, though, that the multi-sport athletic complexes for youth sports especially are Star Bond projects that really do work and really do bring in a lot of tourism. And I guess you could still build them, but do they have restaurants in them sometimes? And not if you, they wouldn't be able to have restaurants in them if you exclude them. Go ahead, Representative Williams.
Yeah, they could still have all of those things. But the bond wouldn't pay for the vertical aspect of it, just like it didn't before 2021. You could have, if you have you go to Derby or with the dinosaur district, you can add anything you want, but you can't use that for to pay, you can't use bonds to pay that off. That's the only difference. And if you're saying that they won't build that restaurant now because we didn't pay for the actual vertical construction, is that where we are? The restaurant isn't going to be built if we don't pay for the restaurant?
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Williams, on the hotels or the restaurants, if they're in the district, would they have to pay property tax, or would that be included in the Star Bond circle? Or whether they build it themselves or it was either way on this amendment, are their property taxes still abated?
This bill does not address any property tax abatement. That's a local issue, not a state. Any further discussion on the amendment? Reviser Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman. I regret adding anything here, but I just wanted to point out, just so the committee is aware, and also so the representative is aware, that there is some similar language in other definitions within the Star Bond Act. Some of those are older. For example, major motorsports complex, for Shawnee County, the auto racetrack facility on page 4. So those are some of those are older definitions. I think it's also in the language for a museum facility, the definition of that on page 6. Just so the committee is aware of that, that's all.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing none, Representative Christy Williams, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So items 5, 6, and I was going to bring up item 9 as well, but I'm going to withdraw my amendment because there are so many questions and it doesn't look like it's favorable to the committee. However, I would really encourage members to research this for yourselves and find out and ask yourself, how much should taxpayers pay in vertical construction compared to any other Kansan that starts a business anywhere else? Is that really the intent of the Star Bond District? And hopefully, Mr. Chair, you could consider any of these at another time. Thank you.
Okay, so you're withdrawing the amendment. Is that okay with the second? Yes, okay. Representative Wassinger. My apologies. There was no second. There would have been if we asked. I didn't ask, so there would have been. We were still explaining it. Okay, are there any other amendments? I have one last one. It has to do with the Port Authority that we added last year to this bill. I have some concerns about that. I did not realize, when we added that, I did not realize that that gave additional taxing authority to an entire county that we don't really want to do without running that through tax. And so this is the wrong place for Port Authority. And so my motion is to remove Port Authority from this bill. And I need a second. Seconded by Vice Chair Ward. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll close on that amendment. All in favor say aye. All against say no. Motion passes. Are there any further amendments? All right, seeing none, I need a motion to pass favorably as amended. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass Senate Bill 197 favorably for passage as amended.
And give the reviser grace to.
And give the reviser grace to
How does that
edit
word? How does that
upon
word?
all
Sorry,
of our
sorry.
amendments.
I do. All right. All in favor say aye. Oh, sorry, seconded by Representative Kessler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against say no. Motion passes. Okay, committee. We only have 10 minutes. Representative Clayton.
All right, so just a technical question. Since we didn't put this bill into another shell, it came to us initially as substitute for SB, 197. So now is it substitute for substitute SB 197? Sub?
We did not make it a substitute bill in that motion.
Oh, yeah, because we already passed it out as is, but could we, I mean, I'll leave it up to the body, but, you know.
Charles,
just wanna-
how's that work? What's easiest for the revisers? Okay, as amended is easier. Okay. No. All right, committee. We are adjourned for the day. I'll see you Monday. We will hear on Monday. Two 739. Was there any else? And watch your calendars. We'll see if we make any further changes. See you then. We're adjourned.